Hello, AP Lang teachers. My name is Lloyd Hoshaw. I'm a teacher at Millard West High School, and today I'm just going to take you through a quick rundown of AP Classroom, what we already know, and then what I do with it, which tends to break the way it was intended. So I know how it works, but what if I do this with it? So as we all know, um, College Board rolled out the AP Classroom for us last year and provides us with a lot of resources, the online platform for us as teachers, but also for the students. And again, I'm sure your AP SI consultants will go through all of this with you. The topic questions are really for instruction. Those personal progress checks are a way for us to measure as they progress throughout the course. The thing that I got really excited about when it was first announced was the access to practice questions and practice exams. And the idea is that it builds to that formal summative assessment on the AP exam. So these are the traditional structures of AP Classroom, where all those topic questions and those personal progress checks, what makes them so powerful is they give different and multiple opportunities for students to demonstrate the skills that are listed in the CED and the curriculum and exam description. And of course, the online resource allows us to say, well, if I really want to work on claims and evidence, here's some additional questions, as well as preparing them for both multiple choice and free response. And then those personal progress checks we unlock and they do it online. And those are more, although still formative, they're a chance to assess their progress. What I find so useful in AP Classroom is that I can look for these questions based on skills, or I can look for these questions based on big ideas. I can also eventually search for mode and things like that. So the way College Board designed it is that we would see these as tools. So our topic questions could be homework. Personal progress checks would be like a check for understanding. And then this format would give us a lot of data that we could review and be able to not only look at it as teachers to inform our instruction, but then the students would be able to see it and keep track of their own progress. And this is great. It's a powerful tool. We're reminded that these personal progress checks are formative. They're not supposed to go into the gradebook as raw data. Any quizzes you make on your own can go into the gradebook, but these personal progress checks are meant to inform your instruction. And then the tool that's supposed to help us feel better about preparation for students in the national exam is we can track these results. We can see how students do on particular questions. We can track them over time for certain students. We can look at our overall courses and tell what is working and what isn't working as far as their understanding. And this is all really helpful. But I wanted to know, how else can I use these resources? There's so much on AP Classroom. What else can I do with it? So I've come up with some alternative uses because it's the question bank that makes me excited as a teacher. That question bank, again, if you haven't toyed around with it a little bit, you got to get in there. You can search by skill. You can search by alignment to the exam, what kind of big ideas that they'd be working on. The perfect would be something that could be ready for the national exam. But as you look earlier in the course, you might choose a moderate or minimal aligned question so that they're preparing your kids at the appropriate level. But here's why I'm excited, because don't we all have one of these, whether they're real or virtual? It's a file cabinet where we've hoarded old prompts. So we've written our own prompts for argument or for analysis. And the question bank online is a wealth of this, already vetted by AP teachers, built to help prepare our students. So I started to think about, how could I do this instructionally rather than as purely as an assessment tool or a check for understanding? Because that's what I did with the prompts anyway in my classroom. But the AP Classroom guarantees that my students have exposure to high quality texts. They're written at the language, the college level of reading that they would be expected on not only the exam, but when they get to courses on a college campus. And it should eventually, they should all align to the stable wording of the prompts. What I also found most useful is that I was then able to start thinking about, how do I do this as a teacher? What are the good instructional practices? So I started using AP Classroom with guided practice and modeling. and I'd pull up prompts online digitally and had the kids could access them. I encourage collaboration with peers very early in the class. I have kids do multiple choice passages and questions together collaboratively. So I started using AP Classroom in that way. And it still makes independent practice possible, but it doesn't limit me to only saying, what can you do? Show me your performance. So let's go to AP Classroom, and I'll show you kind of what I've done with one example, and then we'll talk about the drawbacks and what I think you can gain from it. So once you've logged into AP Classroom, this is under the question bank up here. And then you can create a question. So let's say I'm looking for, I'm looking for rhetorical analysis, multiple choice, and I want it to focus on the skills of identifying claims. And if I do that, it's going to sort for me. And so I can start building a quiz. And then I would have students actually work in groups to answer them. Now, this looks different in different ways. I try to treat it the way I normally did in my classroom, where I'd have them in groups and I'd lay out that prompt, and they would talk to each other and decide on an answer. So sometimes I had them in groups and they all logged in, but only one student recorded the results. Sometimes I had the students all discuss and they each individually recorded their results. And that gave me feedback in the classroom, physical classroom, but also provided a place for that to be gathered in AP Classroom, where they could look at results and see what they did well and what they still needed to work on. What I was most excited about, actually, is I started pulling prompts for free response questions, but I wouldn't score them all. I wouldn't even have them write an entire essay. So, like, if you look at this results, it's really crazy. The red means that the kids didn't score very well on the 6-point rubric. That's because I only scored 1 point of this. I provided the students with a passage by Claire Booth Luce. This one's about women in wartime. And all I asked them to do was to compose the thesis. So when we got to the actual prompt, they had the prompt, and then I would have the students only type their thesis statement. Which, sure, they could do this on a piece of paper, or they could do this in any other format, but this was giving them exposure to AP Classroom. It was showing them what was available, so that when I did assign things on AP Classroom, when we did things like topic questions, or when I created a quiz and released it, they had a chance to practice it in the classroom. I was able to be there to help troubleshoot when they had difficulty with the technology. They understood the format. So I could do this on paper, and I still will, but this gave me one more resource with another tool with all of these questions to work with. So I just had students writing their initial thesis. This was before most instruction on rhetorical analysis thesis. And then I just scored that 1 point. 0-1 for thesis. And that was the initial feedback. And then it also gave me a whole bunch of samples that I could pull together and teach from the next day. What's working, what's not working. And so this is a different prompt, but I often do sheets like this where I have them sorted into effective, adequate, and not quite. And I have comments over here. Well, all these are pulled from their responses. I just copy and paste them into a document. And now I can create comments and give feedback just relatively quickly, and it's recorded. So I've started using AP Classroom as an instructional tool as well as an assessment tool. So what does this mean? Well, it does change the way AP Classroom works or is intended to work. You do lose some data accuracy if you do what I'm suggesting. You're going to have incomplete individual student data. If they work in groups and only one person submits it, you're not going to have a full picture for each individual student. And that individual student's progress report is going to be incomplete compared to others. It does mean that you need to interpret the data a little bit differently. You might have to have conversations with students depending on how often you use AP Classroom. The raw data might not be representative of the student's ability. If they worked in a group, then it's not that individual student's ability, but it's still an instructional tool. But when you get to that progress report page, you're going to have to remember which ones were classroom and which ones were assigned independently. You do need to be mindful of the questions that you choose and try to consider the sequence of College Board. If you're towards the end of your course and you select a question that is worded for units 1 and 2 on the sequence in the CED, it might not really help the students progress or give them the practice they need. Flip side, if you're at the beginning of the year and you're handing them a full AP prompt and asking them to develop a line of reasoning or a body paragraph for practice, it might be over their heads at that point in time. So you just need to be more mindful of that. Again, what I'm suggesting, you are going to lose some accuracy in that data. This report won't mean the same thing as a teacher who uses the topic questions and progress checks straight through the sequence. But it fits my classroom really well, and it's really what I was doing with paper prompts anyway. So what do I gain from this? Well, first of all, I gain access to hundreds of quality questions. And although there is a fuzzy data snapshot, the students and teachers can still access and track those results. There's still a place that's recording them that they can come back to and look at. I find it most useful because it reinforces sound instructional practices using the online format. I can model, I can display my screen, we can go through one together, we can start together and then break off into groups. Collaboration is a key, particularly early with the prompts and with multiple choice, where I want them talking out their responses. And encourages risk taking. They're going to try it out. If we know that it's not a graded assignment, if we know that it is collaborative in nature, then they'll take on things that they wouldn't have done before. Or they'll suggest something because they know that the end result is about progress and not about a grade. And then it does give me an opportunity with AP Classroom to monitor their access and troubleshoot technology issues or how they interact with the online format before I assign anything independently. And basically, it just gives me flexibility. I now have all those prompts available to me. It does turn anything that you select and create an assignment with, those questions become orange later in the database so that you know not to reassign them. Or you can reassign them and have the kids pick up with that prompt at a different time in the course. So if you introduced it early, you could come back to it later and have the students respond to it. I've used this for test prep. So like the week before we do an actual graded synthesis timed right, I'll release a synthesis question on AP Classroom that is optional and not required. They have time in class where they can collaborate with their peers and ask me questions, but then also they can practice independently. I've used it in the classroom and out of the classroom in order to enhance my students' experience with AP level questions and my own instructional practices. So I hope this was useful for you. I hope that you break into that question bank and use those questions as best as you can that will benefit your students. So thank you for your time and have a good rest of your learning experience.